boys and girls, I got two quick things for you. First off is that this is the last week you can use our code at cwhemp.com. So if you haven't listened to our interview with Joel from CW Hemp, you should go check it out, and then you should go grab some. You can use the code InkEcho10 at checkout, and that'll give you 10% off. So that's cwhemp.com, and use the code InkEcho10, and it'll be great. You'll be great. Everybody will be great. The other thing is that I have my new album coming out on May 19th, new Lowercase Noises album, and there's a new single available now. It's called A Course of Strengthening Medicines. It's the first time I've released a full song from this new album, and you can just go to lowercasenoises.com and watch the little music video that I made for it. It's pretty cool, and you can pre-order the album there, and pre-ordering it really helps me a lot, and I think you're really going to like the album, so I think you should do that. Go to lowercasenoises.com and grab a digital pre-order, grab a vinyl before they sell out. There's still a few test pressings left if you want one of those. So lowercasenoises.com. And that's all from me. Here's the show.
Ink and Echo, the show where no host is named Chad, thankfully. Because I was thinking recently, I've never known a good dude who was named Chad.
Chad?
It's
what
just
about
by nature a bad name.
You know what's worse? Tell me what's worse than Chad, though. You just have to change one letter, and it's worse. What is it?
Wait, one letter?
Yep.
You'll have to spell it out for me. I think I know what you have in mind.
Chaz.
Oh, yeah, no good. You know where my mind went? Chode. But I was thinking that would be
adding
an O
another
and an
letter.
E.
You're adding, yeah.
But yeah, the Chad is always the guy.
I've never met a nice person named Chode, actually. You're right, Josh. Every Chode I've met is a total dick.
Know. It could have been like some lovable guy he's just in the gang and everybody calls him the Chode, even though that's not his real name.
The Chode is here. Hi, my name's Chode Johnson.
Anyway, Chads are always bullies. Marshall, do you have any thoughts on that?
I can't say I've ever known a nice guy to be named Chad. Okay. It's never happened.
Yeah.
I can say that for Brad as well.
Yeah.
It's another one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about Phil?
I'd actually know a close friend of mine is named Phil, so I can attest to that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've known at least one bad seed that was named Phil.
You got a bad Phil on the books?
I mean, I would like someone to prove me wrong, you know?
Right.
Let me meet a good guy named Chad.
How about this?
If a guy named Chode walked up to me and like gave me a candy bar or something, I'd be like, all right. I now know it's Chode.
How about this? Nice. I'll flip it on you, Andy.
Thank you, Chode.
Have you ever known an asshole named Josh?
What are you doing here?
I just realized that may have set me up for... I wasn't thinking
You're setting me up to be an ass. It's like a reverse alley-oop. I don't know what you call that.
Here's what I was trying to do. All Joshes are nice guys. Sometimes too nice. Anyway.
Sometimes too nice.
We're joined today by Marshall Usinger. Is that how you say it?
Usinger. You got it.
Excellent.
Yep.
And we'll get into who he is and what he does in a little bit. But he's on. He's in the whole episode. And you can say whatever you want, Marshall.
Oh, cool. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Real quick, Andy.
Yes.
Shush. Over there. I'm just kidding. We have a new patron.
This is my podcast. Okay. Go ahead.
Wesley
I'll allow it.
Venable. I think that is
the Venerable Wesley Venable.
Yeah. That makes it nice.
I bet he's never heard that before.
Thank you. Wesley went top tier. He snagged that last top tier spot, in fact. $10 a month, baby. That's remarkable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Wesley. And if you, listener, don't know what the heck we're talking about, we have a Patreon page. What's that, Andy? It's like a Kickstarter that I'm going to answer for you. It's a Kickstarter that goes on every month where you pledge
like the never-ending Kickstarter. Yeah.
Yeah. Where you pledge support and you get bonus little treats on a website called Patreon that's extra special stuff that Andy and I don't put out publicly. And Wesley is one of the fine people who just got access to all of that back catalog of leaked fake news and all the NSA content we put there. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, if you enjoy what we do and you would like to help us for as little as $1 a month and get access to all this cool stuff, then go to inkandecho.com/Patreon.
Patreon. Okay. Josh, I want to get potentially really heavy at the get-go.
Man. You're usually not the heavy guy.
I know. And it's going to have to start with a story, not really a story. But
you and your damn stories with Jim at work.
I don't know why I said it was a story. It's not a story. I want you guys to know, this is a disclaimer, not a story. Okay, this is me being brutally honest. While the intro music was playing, I ate a marijuana edible. So
wow.
We have, and I'm going to tell you why. So
here we go.
I just want to say this episode could go an hour. It could go more. I'm going to see what happens. So this is an experiment. I obviously didn't tell Josh, but that is happening right now. And I hope you're okay with that, Josh.
Great.
We'll see what happens.
Oh, yeah. Totally fine.
But here's why. It's because I have been, the past couple days, been dealing with some of the heaviest depression that I've ever had. And I just laughed at it because it's insane to say. But my brain is not working like it should. And so I need that edible that I just took. There's been, so this is the first time, I feel like, maybe not the first time, but the first time that I'm realizing that my brain is doing things that are no longer in my control. And it's kind of freaky. And so I'm pretty convinced that I need to go to someone and do something about it. So that's how this conversation starts. If that's not too heavy to start off this podcast, I apologize.
What's your experience with edibles, if I might ask? Is it frequent at all? Or is this a one-off kind of thing?
No, it's pretty frequent lately because I've discovered that it is one of the only things that can help me sleep at night and not make me feel like the worst. So NyQuil, I've said this before, but NyQuil works for me, but I feel terrible in the morning after I use it.
Yeah.
So it helped. And so right now, today, I'll tell you why I did it right now is because I mentioned last week that white noise obsession that I had, with my guitar amp and stuff.
Right.
Today I was listening to a podcast in my just earbuds while I was making dinner, and I could not stop focusing on the white noise of this other person's podcast. It was a Joe Rogan podcast, and I was just listening. I couldn't, and I kept having to rewind because there was something I wanted to hear, and then I would still miss it 3 times in a row. It's I can't even focus on this. So it basically, the edible will help me focus. So that's why I'm doing it for this podcast, and as an experiment to see what am I going to be like in an hour?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there you go.
Now, what you're describing sounds more obsessive, but where does the depression part come in?
Well,
and you don't have to say specifically what is making you depressed.
Are you talking about? You want to know what is making it, or how it's manifesting? Because that's slightly different too.
Yeah, both. Yeah. What do you think has onset that?
Well, like I said, I
guess.
Yeah. No, there are definitely some things that are kind of catalysts, but like I mentioned before, I do feel like this is particularly interesting, I guess, because the things I'm feeling and thinking seem to be far greater than the experiences I'm having that would potentially make me a little bit depressed. You know what I mean? So it's something kind of set it off, and it's just it's kind of we've talked about anxiety in the past. It's something will make you anxious, but then for some reason it takes hold, and you're I don't know why this is happening anymore. So I mean, a big thing is taxes for me. I grossly underestimated how much I was going to have to pay for 2016, And
Dang.
To be completely honest, I had to pull money out of a line of credit to pay my taxes. And so I have very little money right now and a lot of debt, and that feels terrible. And then, this is the whole album release process right now is very taxing on me. So it's not necessarily good or bad, but it's just a lot of obsession over emails. Like, did enough pre-orders come in today? Like, what are people saying about anything I'm posting or whatever? So that whole thing is very hard on me mentally. And so, like I said, those things are not terrible, end of the world, anything. But I mean, today I was just I was just sitting in my chair, like, and not knowing what to do with myself. I couldn't do anything, and just stuff like that. Like, I can't even think clearly enough right now to really articulate what's going on with it, but that's what's happening. And marijuana helps me, and that's legitimately why I've been using it somewhat more frequently. So there.
Yeah. Dang, man. I'm sorry that is happening to you. I know that's such a weak and typical thing to say, but I absolutely know what that feels like, what you're describing.
Yeah.
And how paralyzing it is.
Yeah. And I was talking to Megan about it earlier, and I was like, I mean, kind of like what I just said, but it's, I feel like the older I've been getting, for one, I've been able to be more aware of what's happening in my body and my mind, whereas previously I've been very bad at that. And I'm like, like I already said, it's just, I'm realizing that things, even potentially things that have been part of my life for a long time, are potentially not normal. Like, kind of like we talked about last week, just having like kind of a tight pit in your stomach. Like, I think I have that all the time. I don't think that's normal or good or something I should just be like, yeah, whatever. It's just the way life works, I guess. You're just anxious and terrified 24 hours a day. So yeah, I want to look into seeing somebody.
Right.
I have a friend here who has recently seen someone. I might do that. So yeah, honest, this is like the first few days of me being like, well, I think I might need to go to a doctor and see what could help me. So, yeah. Yeah,
man. I think that would be fruitful. I mean, as someone who has done that several times myself.
And it's different because I actually want to. Like, I think in the past I would have been like, I'd have some pride and like, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to be on antidepressants or whatever. But now I'm just like, I would like to have a day where I actually am creative and produce things all day and then feel good about myself more often and that kind of stuff. So,
right.
So there, sorry to bring that down, but I was like, I just wanted to get that out there kind of.
No, you don't have to apologize for that. I'm glad you felt.
Also, this is the first time I've ever spoken with Marshall, and here I am, like,
here we are
dumping the worst shit of my life.
Let me add to that as someone who, and as our first conversation, has been seeing someone for a couple months, and I would highly recommend it just to get a very objective outside perspective on things that are happening. I think, my close friends know me so well. They know what I'm going through. It just is nice to have someone who doesn't know you at all.
What type of person are you seeing, and what are you hoping to get out of it, or are getting out of it right now?
Sure. For me, well, the reason I reached out was for mostly for anxiety. And just high stress level. And the past year or so of my life, there were just a lot of changes. My wife and I moved states. Some things with my job changed. We had our first son, and so I ended up just seeing a counselor, through my insurance. And she just kind of said, hey, it sounds like all this change has kind of caused a lot of anxiety and stress, and just basically a lot of things to kind of spiral in that sense. And so initially I wasn't looking to get on any medication. I kind of wanted to talk about things first and see if, some changes to my routine and so forth would be helpful. And so far, it's been really great, just like I mentioned, just to purely have someone be able to kind of give insight on that and offer help.
So you haven't moved on to any pharmaceuticals or anything?
No, not as of yet, but I'm in your same shoes, I feel. I mean, I'm debating.
Yeah. You being in Denver, do you use marijuana for helping with any of those things, or no?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't. I have friends who have, and they have advised me that it doesn't seem to work for them.
Really?
And
Interesting.
I don't know. I just haven't given it a try as of yet for those reasons. But I would be open to that, I think, before maybe prescription medication.
Sure.
Yeah, that's something I've heard from multiple people. Is like it makes sense to explore that before. The other options for sure.
And now everyone knows me as well. There we go.
Right. Well, man, Andy, I feel like this is so prevalent though today that what you're describing and what Marshall just said, and even what I've said on this show, I think a lot of people are in this place. People specifically around their late 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
And, of our generation, and most of us living probably relatively comfortable lives, and yet we're just overwhelmed by this incredible anxiety.
Yeah, I wonder if any of it is, I was thinking about this the other day, it's like, when you're growing up, at least if you're not homeschooled, I guess, but everything changes every 4 years. So Marshall, this is maybe the opposite of what you're saying, but it's just like, so, I graduated college in 2008, and then so 2012, I quit my job. So that was like 4 years. And then it's been almost 4 years since I quit my job, but there's no like change in sight. It's kind of like, well, life is what it is now. There's no big change coming up unless I do something horrible or something horrible happens in my life, or I like make something happen, I wonder if that's a part of it. It's like, well, I'm here now, and nothing, like what is next? I don't even know. I don't know if that's a part of it at all. It's just something I was thinking about the other day,
Do you mean it? Are you meaning it gives you something to look to or look forward to in some sense?
Well, I don't know. Or it's just like there's nothing on the horizon necessarily. And I don't know what that, and I'm not saying that's anything negative to me. Like, I'm pretty happy with my life situation and my kids and my wife. But at the same time, it's just like, I might be doing the thing that I'm going to be doing until I die, like, instead of like, oh, I'm moving to middle school next year, or I'm moving to high school next year. Like, there's no thing left like that.
Like those forced changes are almost advantageous to our lives because they mix it up and cause us to adapt.
Exactly. So it's like all on us now as late 20s, early 30s people. It's like, well, we've got to be here in life now and make it what it's going to be, I guess.
Right.
It's just maybe more pressure, more, I don't know, fuel for existential crises. Who knows?
Right. Yeah. It's heavy stuff. And I mean, for the three of us represented here, there are probably hundreds or thousands of people who are dealing with it far worse, frankly, with much worse addiction or turning to who knows what.
Right.
And I don't mean to harp on this show, but I just feel like social media has at least something to do with it, with adding to this idea that quote unquote success is attainable, and that if we feel like we're not being productive or moving ourselves towards the best life possible, that we're somehow, dwindling our days away or something, which is just not true at all, but so hard to believe that in this time period.
Right. And even today, like I was, my kids went to bed and Megan was hanging out in here with me for a little bit, and she was like, just sit on the couch with me and I'll like rub your back or whatever. And I was like, I can't right now. Like I have to clean up this room. Like I was still in my obsessive mode, and which is weird because normally I'd be like, hell yeah, I'll just sit and get a back rub. Like what's wrong with me? But then, the whole, like I mentioned before, the whole thing with the album release, like I was sitting there on my phone. Eventually I went and sat on the couch with Megan, but I couldn't not look at my phone. I was like, I posted a couple Instagram things today. I need to check with pre-orders are coming in. It's just like, she's like, you could not look at that. I was like, no, I have to right now. I just have to. And that sucks. And I feel bad about it. But so that's like a different aspect of the social media thing. It's like, it's all just right in my fucking thing in my pocket that I can just pick up, I wish it was a little harder to get to, but then at the same time, I'm like, that's the whole reason why it works and really why I have a career. So,
well, it's funny, man, to kind of circle back what you said earlier, about your taxes and us being you and I being in kind of the same field creatively.
Yes.
I always kind of, I look at someone in your shoes and me having my day job, I go, okay, that's something I want to get to, doing this full time. But of
and now
course,
you're like, do I?
Of course.
Do I want to get there?
You don't think at all about those things. And someone like myself who, I stress enough about finances when I get my paycheck from a 40-hour-a-week job. And I can imagine where you are, there's so much of that stuff I just have not thought about. I feel like I should run away now, maybe.
No, don't do that. Well, this would be a good point. We should talk about what you do and who you are now. I feel like we're doing this podcast backwards a little bit.
Let's do it backwards.
But yeah, so for my sake and the listener's sake, tell us about yourself, Marshall. I have a kid named Marshall. It's a good name. So go ahead.
Oh, great. Yeah, my name's Marshall. I live here in Denver. I'm sitting with Josh Gaines. And
jealous.
Yeah.
Andy's never met me.
I am a guitarist and composer. About a year and a half ago, I started kind of trying to take a crack at being a composer and producing my own music a little more seriously. Before that time, I just grew up like a lot of guys who play, just being in bands, and toured with a couple bands for a while. And now I've seemingly found something that has been a really good fit for me, and I really enjoy doing. Just
You're
producing,
talking about the composing and producing.
Yeah. Producing my own music has just been. I still think of it as a huge just learning curve for me in many ways, just because I kind of always wanted to dabble in production. Never went there being in bands. There were always guys recording our music and doing that. And so, so primarily now I just work with just doing music licensing mostly, producing music and getting it out for licensing. And I hope to keep doing that. Hopefully make a career move towards that at some point. But
so that is the goal, even still after the first 20 minutes of this podcast.
I would like it.
That was a joke. You should want to do it. Yeah.
I have a pretty good day job that just allows me to work from home and is really a good fit for just what I'm doing currently. Nice. My wife and I, we have our son is just 7 months old. So really for a day job situation, it really is a nice thing to be at home. Yeah. But I continue to try and find the balance of having a baby and writing music and working. And I would say that's the only detriment to being at home is I do do all those things at home.
Right.
That can get to be a bit much, but I'm finding a balance.
Yeah.
I'm curious, as someone, well, I mean, obviously I also work from home. Do you have any sort of ritual? Like, because the thing I loved most about my old day job was the commute. And so I find myself, even though I work from home and it's great, like a lot of days I'm like, I just have to go drive into town for like literally any reason, just so I'll even just go through like a Wendy's and get a drink and then drive right back, like just to like be in the car and kind of reset a little bit. Do you have to do anything like that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I recently, with getting into this season, I was on leave for a bit from work when we had our son, and then kind of getting back into the rhythm. I'll usually go for a run or something on my lunch break, which has turned out to be a very good thing. Work the first 4 hours of the day or so, and then have an hour lunch, and I'll go for a run. We live kind of right off a trail, so that's been a rhythm for me that has been really nice and kind of clears my head, at least for the second half of the day. But if if you're at home all day and I don't do that, or the weather's bad, and then I go directly to my computer to start trying to write some music or whatnot, that's that can be a bit much.
The context switch doesn't work so well when there's no context actually switching. In the situation.
Do you have separate spaces in your home where, like, this is my work area, this is my creative area, or are they meshed together?
They used to be separate, and very recently they're in the same room now. So I have kind of my work computer, and then I have my musical situation on the other side of things. And we'll see how that goes.
Sure.
It's very, very recent. We moved some stuff around actually because of the baby. So we're trying that out. I hope it works out.
Right.
It's a better fit for the house. But I hope it kind of doesn't get in the way as far as working and being in the same space.
Right.
Yeah.
And your day job, which you don't have to be specific if you don't want to, but do you have any trouble staying motivated to get your work done, or is the work such that you can't really get away from it? Like, when you're there, you have to be there.
Yeah. There's a bit of both. Typically when I'm there and I'm, clocked in and supposed to be doing what I'm doing, you have to be doing that. And then there's those times where, you might have some downtime and things like that. And I've tried not to make too many jokes about that, but oftentimes I will try and get other things done with, music being right there and we have a baby right there. That's a challenge though at home as well, because in a way, you have all those distractions where it can kind of, get in the way of work at times. But, I've been doing that. I've been doing this job at home for going on 3 years now.
Yeah.
So I've kind of worked out when I can have distractions and not, and when I need to focus.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You sound more disciplined than I.
Me too.
And I go to a
I maybe
physical place.
Sound that way, but yes.
Man, I've been thinking about that a lot too. Just so I am a little anxious to say this on mic, but because it could potentially get me in trouble if the right person heard it. But there is not a lot of management or people overseeing me at my job, and so I always get my work done in an appropriate amount of time. But there are, I guess the simplest way to say it, there's a lot more I could do if I was really gung-ho and like wanted to move up in the company and be really proactive towards this job.
Sell bigger Christian light bulbs at some point.
Yeah. But I'm not. But the trouble is this is the least monitoring I've ever had during the day in a job. And that is actually bad to my detriment.
Yeah. Sure.
Because it just makes me procrastinate everything. Both. So, like, full disclosure, my job, I would say my bosses do not care if I write fiction at work or if I work on a script or whatever. Like, as all my stuff's done, they don't mind. But yeah, it's like I go in and got a stack of emails and I kind of, glance through them and it's like, well, that one I can take care of this afternoon. I still get them all done, but then what do I use that time for? It's like checking Twitter, checking Reddit, checking, and it's that makes me feel at the end of the day so sick with myself.
Yeah.
Both because I feel like I'm not being a faithful worker, and because I could have, written for an hour and a half. I could have made some progress, and I don't.
I would say I totally relate to that. In some ways, I mean, I would say if you could be writing, I would be very happy that you were able to have that balance while you're at work. But I understand what you mean when you end up, checking social media or doing that. I find myself doing that at work and it's kind of like, why am I doing this? But that sounds like I would be, if I had a job where I could, get your work done and then kind of have some time to do what motivates you creatively. That sounds great to me.
Right.
So, I mean, with my old job, I felt the exact same way as you, Josh. And it's had so little oversight, and it was so strange. And I may have said this before, but so I was working at a pseudo-government national laboratory. So there were literally situations where my boss was not allowed to know what I was working on. So you get in these weird situations where this person knows about this piece of what I'm doing, and this person only knows about this other piece. And you can kind of end up playing them off each other and be like, well, I'm doing this other thing. And then they can't even know what you're doing. And all that combined with just being a pretty lax environment is the exact same thing. I went and sat in my office and I was just like, I would go in every morning and be like, okay, today I want to do some real work. And because I didn't want to leave feeling like shit every day, because after 8 or 9 hours of hoping you're going to do work and then doing almost nothing, that just feels terrible no matter what your actual job was or wasn't supposed to be, So that was the worst. And I remember thinking, I was like, I wish my manager would ride me a little harder, because then I would have more motivation to actually do something and I would feel better about myself. If she was more of a jerk to me, I would feel better about myself, was kind of how it was.
Sure.
And I found myself fantasizing about, I was like, man, I am just so jealous of those damn burger flippers. They just go in, they get an order, they flip a burger, and then that order's done. And they're like, I accomplished one burger just now. There's something sort of, that's silly and in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I was like, an easily quantifiable job sounds super nice to me a lot of the time. Whereas at the end of the day, I did X amount of these things and they're all done and it's great. So that was kind of 2 points that I went on. But
I would be curious though, with you, Josh, when you have something, that you're passionate about, such as writing. For me, I would say maybe a year or 2 years ago when I started this job, I had the mentality of move up in the company, get into management financially, whatever the motivation is. I feel like one of the best things for me now has been, now that I'm sort of getting into a rhythm of, doing things with music, it almost has made me, I feel a little more comfortable in just doing my job on the day-to-day and not having this kind of, unrest of, well, I need to move up, I need to advance. And to me, that's been really good in my job as well.
Could you also say it so that you are, you've accepted being unsatisfied in your day job because you're filling in the gaps outside of it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's totally it. And I found for me, that's been something I think that if I need to be at my day job for, longer than I want to be, I have these other things that are beginning to be fulfilling. And so it's made me comfortable in just doing the, clock in, clock out sort of thing, and not being like, I need to make more money or I need to be a manager and all this. I don't want to be responsible for anyone else.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing, because I wonder if it's not so much just like, this is what fulfills me and this is what doesn't, but I wonder if anyone can ever be completely fulfilled by one task or one job or one thing, because one thing I'm trying to figure out is like, all I do is music now. And I'm like, well, that turns into its own monster, as we've discussed on this whole podcast. So it's like, well, how do I like branch it out a little bit? So like the analogy, and it's not really an analogy because it's real, but it's like, whenever I get to do music with other people or play in the other band that I'm in, where it's like, there's a musical thing I do where I am the sole everything for it. And that's cool. And it's also terrible in certain ways. And then there's another situation where I'm in a band of 4 or 5 people and I only have, 1/5 of a say in a creative output song or whatever. And that can be terrible because you're like, you don't actually get anything necessarily to be the way you would want it to be. But when you do those things together, they're both okay. Because like when I'm alone and having to do everything, I'm like, oh, well, luckily I have this other musical situation where I can relinquish a lot of control. And then whereas when I'm in the band, I'm like, yeah, I can give up this thing that I thought I was precious about because I have my own thing where I can go and do whatever I want, So I wonder if there's got to be that sort of balance with everything, whether it's creative or not. Like the fact that you're doing 2 things that are sort of disparate, music and your day job, probably is beneficial to both of them in a way.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, to the earlier thing you said, I don't think anyone is probably ever fully satisfied in any single thing.
Right. And that's okay. I don't think we're supposed to be.
Right. But I do think a tension needs to exist. A tension, not attention. A tension between a part of your day that is work, that is hard, and a part of your day that is part of your day.
No doy. That's what I say.
Dope.
That is maybe also work, but it's creative and interesting work.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know that's a simple concept, but one of the problems right now is I just don't have enough to do in a day. There's no reason I need to be at an office for 40 hours. I could get everything done in 18, probably, truthfully. But with this same company, when I was in a different position that kept me just absolutely, busy all day, I would scramble to do my work, and the last hour of the day, if I could squeeze in some writing, that felt great. Because I felt accomplished in my work. I felt like I had done a good job, but I was also doing something that was life-giving to me and like making progress towards a novel. Yeah,
I agree. I think for me too, and I think you guys have talked about this. It's just the danger of if you don't have some sort of routine or maybe something else, such as a tension. I would just be worried that I wouldn't get anything done creatively if I got up, and didn't have anything to do that day. Right. I would just be like, okay, I'm going to go enjoy the day, and then realize that I didn't do anything. That would be my fear.
And you're like, it's 10:30. I can have a beer, right? That's fine.
Yes.
And I don't want to, just one other point on this subject is that, productivity doesn't equate how valuable we are, or like how good we should feel. We ought to be able to, there's got to be a balance that exists there, that we can finish a day and it's like, well, I didn't get anything creative done, but that doesn't mean I'm a worthless piece of shit.
Well, and maybe it's less, it's more redefining productivity, because I think I need to come away from a day feeling like something came out of it. Now, it may not be anything tangible. It may be the fact that I burned an uncreative day, and it's like, cool, I got that out of my system. That was sort of productive in a way. Now I don't have to have
or enjoyable, like a relaxing day, or just a refresh.
Yeah. So like personally, if I could redefine productivity, that would help me some days. It's like, because that was my big problem at my old job, is because I come away from 8 hours where I couldn't be doing music or what I wanted to be doing, and I had nothing to show for that, and that always felt shitty. Not even on any definition of productive. Like I couldn't prove that I did anything. I literally was like on Facebook and reading Gizmodo all day. So
is that one of the robots on MST3K? I don't know what Gizmodo is.
Tom Gizmodo. Kidding. Yeah. So there's that. That's all I was going to say.
Okay. Well, my beer is empty, so I'm going to get another. And then I think when we come back to our program, it's time for an ad.
Are you going to expect me to edit this out? You getting a beer?
Me too, Andy.
You can do
please.
what you want.
Are you asking me if you can have a beer? I don't know what's happening.
No, if you can edit out me getting a beer.
Oh, okay.
You can leave it in. You can cut it out. You can do your own. You can make it the Andy show for 30 seconds.
Listeners, I could do that. No, that'd be boring. Listeners, check out this sick ass edit I'm about to do. Classic.
Okay, cue that ad music, Andy.
All right, here we go.
Andy, thank goodness for what you talked about on this show so far, because I have a solution to most of your problems here. Our sponsor does, I should say.
Okay.
So you and Marshall, you both do instrumental music. And I would say the weakest link in that scenario is that you both are human. Because humans are dumb, we're fallible, we get sick and we die and fall apart. And but a robot, artificial intelligence, does not. So
kind of like Gizmodo, like we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, like Tom Gizmodo from MST3K. I would say that all music in the world should actually be made by androids, and probably will be someday.
Absolutely.
Just take out the hunk of meat and bone that is trying to pretend they can make perfect music, and just put in a robot
what's going to happen
instead.
is driverless cars are going to take over the trucking industry. They're all going to lose our jobs, and then they're coming for me next. Like the robots are just going to take it over for sure.
Right. So our sponsor today is called Instrumentalligence. Instrumentalligence. You
sound real confident.
Mm-hmm. It's a big long word with a lot of I's.
Instrumentalogist.
And Andy, can you describe to me what you think a product such as this would do for you, or an AI creating music?
I'm gonna guess it's kind of like an exoskeleton that you put on. So it has its own brain and way of doing things, but you can choose to let go of yourself and just let the exoskeleton do it for you, or you can kind of pop back in and be like, yeah, I want a sandwich right now, and then you get a sandwich in there. But
it keeps working, by the way.
And it's kind of like a localized version of the Matrix, where it's like it just gets on your head with all these little head connections, and it messes with it, you know. So it changes your creative output. It just it hacks in and it gets through it, and then the music is not coming from you anymore, but it's using you as like a conduit. Does that make sense?
Yes. And creating
Did I get it right?
songs. Oh yeah, that's just what it does. I mean, Beethoven was a hack compared to this technology.
Totally. Imagine
Mozart,
if he had one of these
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. He would have done more than 9 symphonies or whatever it was. That's an inaccurate piece of information. Marshall, do you have any ideas for how this product could be helpful to you? It's okay if you don't.
So maybe you're saying I can just plug my guitar in right into the computer. Maybe I play something. Maybe I don't play something. But
it is about the notes you don't play. Yeah.
The results are a song.
It's more about what I don't play.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah. Well, to try out this remarkable product for $1 song. They'll give you one free trial song just so you can see what it can do.
Interesting.
Go to inkintecho.com/instrumentelligence.
Instrumentelligence.
All one word.
All right. Great. I can't wait to try it. Just get up in the morning, put on my skeleton.
Hey, I do want to say, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
On a serious note, our Charlotte's Web discount code is still valid.
Oh, yeah.
And this is, in fact, the last week. So if you want to try Charlotte's Hemp, and if you want to Charlotte's Web Hemp, and you want to get 10% off your entire order, please go to cwhemp.com and at checkout use the discount code INKECHO10. That's capital I, capital E, 10, and you'll get 10% off all their anxiety relieving products.
Yeah.
Truly, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'm going extra strength next time. I haven't tried that yet.
I'm going to do that too.
Yeah. So I have a question for you guys, which is, how do you, so in the past, I don't know, 10 or 8 years or who knows, but
some even number of years.
Instrumental music has become extremely prevalent because it's gotten cheaper and easier to record at home. The gear, whatever, is more accessible, recording programs, mics, all that. How do you guys set yourselves apart when there are a million other, to use the term, ambient instrumental people producing music?
Oh boy.
And I want Marshall to answer first.
Should I go first?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm just going to copy your answer so I don't get a good one.
That's a great question. And let me say that I'm extremely just grateful for the technology that I feel, started me doing this, because it sort of came, later in life for me, getting into production. And I think those tools and just the accessibility allowed me to really learn it just, at home. I like to think that what I attempt to do and be set apart is just sort of the songwriting in general. Although my music is instrumental, it's also fairly structured. I tend to have, a section that would maybe resemble a verse and a bigger section. And I think that just comes from what kind of bands I grew up playing in. And I like to have very just big and kind of uplifting, kind of an uplifting feeling. And I think that kind of the market that I'm in and people who are using that music, I just like to think that it's the quality of the music that sets it apart. If it does, it's not necessarily even the production. I mean, there's stuff I'm sure out there that is far better than the production that I'm doing, but I still think there's a quality to the songs that people can connect to, even if they're not maybe, if they're new to maybe instrumental music or something like that. There's kind of a more accessibility to it than maybe more drone kind of ambient music. And I don't necessarily aim to do that. That's just kind of the music that I've ended up writing over these past couple of years.
Yeah.
See, I think that's the key is so technology helps and hurts us in this situation because, you can sit down and do whatever you can even possibly think of at a computer. The reason I bring it up is because part of my thing, something I did years ago on YouTube was do these like tutorial videos on how to do this stuff. Basically more about the guitar sounds than anything songwriting wise, but I thought I was doing a helpful thing for people. And then one thing I've thought over the years is like, maybe I've contributed to a system that is tricking people into thinking that they can discover the answers about how to be themselves, when really the answer is just to be themselves. And so I just imagine, like, I wonder if I was detrimental to people at all by giving away too much. And that, I don't really care either way, but I just imagine someone who hears one of my songs or something and then says, I want to do that, which is completely fine. And then they find a video and they're like, okay, I know exactly what to get and how to do it now. And there's no kind of like experimentation process. Because for me, it's all been just, here's my personal taste. Here's bands I like. I'm going to sort of try to emulate them, but I'm going to fail. I'm not going to be able to do it all the way because I'm not as good as them and I'm me. So, and then, so whatever comes out is me. And that was my roundabout way of getting to the, like, what's going to set me apart or Marshall apart or anybody apart doing anything is like, it's got to be you. So I don't know, like those videos I made, I'm like, there's some good concepts there, but I mean, in any sort of tutorial or how to or whatever in the creative world, I hope people would be able to take it and take some like leveled up knowledge away from it, not just the like specific steps of what happened. Is this making any sense at all?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I just feel like people need to search a little more, and we've potentially made it too easy for them to skip that step. That's really what I was trying to say.
Well, it's such a simple answer, I feel like, but I'm sure you can relate, Andy, when I find myself, the company I work with, which is Soundstripe Music, I find myself...
Former podcast guest?
Yeah. Former podcast. I find myself, looking at the other composers and, thinking I should make a song like that, or I should do a vibe like that, or, and I'm sure, Andy, that just doesn't, well, at least for me, it doesn't work when I do that. And, and that can be frustrating because you have this quality that you're seeing with other people you respect and want to emulate that. But truly the best songs, I think, in my opinion, and the things that have done very well for me, just purely just come from just me just sitting down and starting with a chord progression or something of that nature. So it sounds so simple to say just to be yourself, but I really feel like in this situation, I'm still working on that, but I feel like it's what works best.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and it takes some time, just some years of living and aging and maturity to even recognize that simple thing. Because probably all of us in younger years, I mean, we were doing exactly that. We were emulating the people who inspired us. And that totally goes for writing as well as music. And just sort of that discovery process, and also just gaining some self-confidence that people actually would like to hear something that is completely me, something that's completely original.
Well, I'm curious, Marshall. So Josh mentioned that or at least you said that you thought the music is becoming more prevalent, ambient instrumental music, and I don't.
Did you say that, Josh?
Josh said that.
Yeah.
You said,
yeah.
But I'm just curious if you think that's true or not, actually, because I don't know if it is, or if it's a fad. Is this going to come and go? I'm talking.
Don't contradict me.
I don't know. I mean, I could see in ways how maybe prevalent film scores and things like that are becoming. It seems to me a bit more just something that people acknowledge and people enjoy. And all the big kind of instrumental bands, I mean, I think people have maybe recognized those names a little bit more. People who watch Friday Night Lights, they like explosions in the sky. And,
so you have to get this, Marshall. Anyone who hears your music for the first time and doesn't know what it is, do they say, oh, it's like explosions in the sky? Only because there's no words, not because of any other similarity. That drives me, it doesn't drive me nuts. I don't really care, but it's just funny because people are like, the most noticeable thing about your music is that there's no lyrics. Yeah,
it is. If it is coming up a bit more, I think that's cool.
Sure.
But I do think there's, when it comes to the more really, if you want to say ambient side or more just drone kind of music, I still think that's not something I've explored as of yet. So if someone were to hear stuff that I do, I like I say, I think it's a bit more easy for someone who hasn't heard it before just to kind of catch on. Whereas those, more drawn out stuff, I don't know if that's something I see coming more popular or not. I would probably say no if I were to guess.
Yeah, and I don't know if it followed the same trajectory at all as Explosions in the Sky or This Will Destroy You or something like.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know if it's having a resurgence or anything, or if it's just kind of status quo for that kind of more academic type of ambient music, I guess you could call it.
Yeah. Andy, do you still listen to any music in the vein of what music you make?
I've actually started to a little more recently.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to get... I've been thinking about how... Well, it's like, I never know if it's good to be totally immersed in the style that you're doing or not. I can never know if that's good for me or bad for me. And I think it changes, and I'm trying to recognize when it's good and when it's bad. And I think now it's good for me to listen because I'm like coming out of making an album like, well, let's start like filling this up again and get inspired by different things. So, I have a little more recently.
Because you've had periods where you did not at all.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like I'm coming out of one of those, and not for any like, that wasn't self-imposed. It was just I have zero desire to listen to it. And also when I do, my mind can't work the way it used to when I first heard it, because I'm just like, tearing it apart. Not tearing it apart, but just listening too critically, trying to figure out what's going on. And it's a different listening experience. And I don't know, it's been so relatively long that now, I mean, before we got on this podcast, I was listening to Yonzi and Alex, which is one of my favorite, favorite.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
They just have the one, wait, is that the same as Rice Boy Sleeps?
Yeah, it's Rice Boy Sleeps.
Okay. And they just have the one record, don't they?
Yeah, and it's amazing.
Man.
Yeah, so good. So, but even today, as I was listening to it, I was kind of hearing it in a different way. I was like, oh, what is that happening? And like, so I wish I could kind of go back on that. I don't know how, but maybe that plays into this weird OCD stuff that's popping up in me. I don't know.
Sure.
But yeah.
I found myself to be more listening to film scores recently, which is kind of new for me. And I think, like you said, Andy, it's kind of good and bad, because a little creeps in there of, well, I want to do something like this. I should try that, when that necessarily, won't necessarily end well. But that's been new for me, because I did kind of used to be into all those, instrumental bands when I was kind of getting into it and all that. But probably my favorite that I always go back to is, are you guys familiar with the Broadchurch score by Olafur Arnalds?
Olafur,
no.
Yeah.
That was the BBC series, Broadchurch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know that guy's name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I always come back to that one, and I would love to do something like in that vein. I mean, it's great. Right. But then Josh and I were talking about Arrival earlier. Yeah. And I also
Richter.
I'm just amazed at what these guys do in the scores, and kind of what they do with just, human voices and just natural things with sounds. It's crazy to me. I would love to kind of adventure there at some point.
See, that's interesting. So you would want to do film scores, because I've thought about it, and I don't know if I would enjoy it or not, because I don't know like the deadlines, and I don't even actually know how it works really, if you write to an edit of the film, or how the two actually kind of, I mean, when we're talking about big like orchestral kind of things, like I don't even know how it works, and it sounds potentially cripplingly terrifying.
Yeah, it does. I don't know if I could ever do that, and people have asked me that, and it's honestly, it's not something I considered when I started doing this, and I don't know if it's something that I would ever really do, because I think the same thing, I don't necessarily see myself writing to, visual scene or something like that. So I think more so I just get I'm really intrigued by how these guys do that and what they're able to do, just with very minimal instruments and things like that. So I would love to pick up some of those qualities, maybe writing music moving forward. But I think as of now, I would be terrified to do some kind of film project.
so that makes me think, like, when you're doing a soundtrack or a score to anything, like you have a predefined kind of mood or vibe that you have to write to, and that you have to have a goal for the song, like it has to do something specific. When you, Marshall, when you write your music, do you sit down and like have a goal for it? Do you say, I want it to feel this way? Because personally, that never really works very well for me. I just have to sit down and not put any pressure on it. And that's why I'm sort of scared of doing things like that. Like a movie is like, I don't want to be told how to feel with this song. I don't think I would work very well under that situation.
The only time I've really experimented with that is in addition to licensing, I've had the opportunity to do some stuff, just kind of random TV spots and that sort of thing. And they will give you, kind of the vibe that they want, or they'll give you example tracks, they want to sound, like Imagine Dragons or something like that.
Right.
And it's hit or miss for me. I have had success doing it, and I think it's just because I kind of come from a background of just kind of playing some, more poppy kind of guitar and things like that. And so if I just need to knock out a chord progression and start there, and kind of build around that, then it seems to, it can work pretty well sometimes, but it's not the same. It's not the same as just sitting down and just writing, it's not as enjoyable or I would much rather sit down and just kind of see what comes than having kind of a goal in mind, because when nothing is coming out of that, it can be frustrating.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right.
And so do you write music for like a full release, or is it strictly for licensing? Like it's only on these certain sites, it's not for public consumption, for lack of a better phrase?
Sure. I did release an album that's just on on Spotify and Apple Music.
Yeah.
And I did that. I mostly did that because it was right around the time I had my son, and I wrote all this music, and I just kind of felt like it was very cohesive, just kind of this group of songs that came. And I thought it would be fun to release that and give some, people something to listen to. And I still kind of toy around with the idea of wanting to maybe play those songs live or not at some point, because I think that would be really fun. It's just more so finding the venue to do that, and the time and the playing with tracks and all this. So, but I did I have one album release that's available, but that's it.
Wait,
for
what
right
is your
now.
project called? We didn't even do that. We're bad hosts.
Yeah, no worries. The project moniker is Be Still the Earth.
Okay.
And so that's what it's available on.
And the album is called Locus.
It's called Locus, yep.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was that recent.
Yeah, it
so
was
only 7 or 8 months ago, or
yeah, I think it was maybe October or November that I put it online.
Yeah,
and it wasn't. I can't even. It's funny because a couple of the tracks were maybe 2 or 3 of the tracks were some of the first songs that I wrote when I started doing instrumental stuff. And actually, let me backtrack. I have the full length album, but then I also have an EP. I actually have 2 EPs that are on Spotify. One is just 2 songs, and then one is just a group of the first songs that I kind of ever wrote, and my buddy actually helped me record them. And so the full length that I put on there, a couple of those songs were some of the first things that I had ever done, and I just kind of re-recorded a lot of it, kind of, vamped them up a bit, and then a lot of them were very recent songs. And it kind of all just seemed to come together very well. And I didn't necessarily know at the time that I was, trying to put together an album, but I was kind of I was really happy with the flow of it once it was all done. I think it's 10 songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a cool way to do it, to not go in wanting to do it. It just kind of happens.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to pursue, even though I don't know how to pursue something like that.
Well, Andy, how do you approach the YouTube videos you do that are essentially improvised?
Oh, that's the same thing, man. It's a lot of it is, and this goes back to the productivity thing potentially, is like some days I, honestly just want to be able to get up, do a thing, and then the thing is done at the end of the day. Yeah. So like with an album, you're like, this is going to take 6 months. And at the end of a day, you're like, I don't even know if I got anywhere today. But with a YouTube video, I can just sit there and be like, okay, I've got a couple hours. I'm going to come up with a musical idea that's pleasing to me. I'm going to film it and I'm going to put it up, and then it's done. And I'm never going to touch it again, So it's just I don't know. I used to talk about how I like having different levels of things that I release. So it's like you can release a lot of one thing, but they take very small amounts of time to do. So you put out a lot of those, and then there's a spectrum where on the other side is like, here's a thing you put out very rarely, but it takes a long time to do it, and you kind of want to do everything in the whole spectrum. Just depending on the day, you work on the thing that's going to be out at the end of the day, or the thing that's going to be out 8 months from now. Like, just pick one, see how I feel in the morning, and which one I'm going to do.
Yeah.
What have you found? I'm curious, Andy, with in the way of people releasing mostly singles now. Is that something that you've had to consider at all? Because I felt like for me, I was like, okay, I'm putting out this full-length album, but, do people even appreciate that anymore? Because it seems to be more so get a single every couple months or...
Right. Yeah, we could be SoundCloud rappers. Like, that's what they do. No, that's a thing that I'm cognizant of that, but I don't think I really care very much. Yeah. Because this whole... and not to go back all the way to the beginning, but it's like this whole project of mine, which is, like we mentioned earlier, is largely afforded by technology and how much I'm able to do by myself. But the good thing about that is like this entire time I've only ever done exactly what I wanted. So the fact that, it seems to be cool to just put out a bunch of singles, like I don't want to do that. Like, it's kind of like what you were saying with your album. It's like these all feel cohesive and these all go together. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think I'll ever not write that way, no matter what is happening in the world or industry around me. It's just like, and that's the other thing too, is like whatever success I've had here, it's the key ingredient was that I only did what I wanted to do. And so the moment I start changing that piece of it, it's like, oh, well, I got to put out a single or do whatever because it seems like a good move for certain things. It's just like, I imagine that's when stuff's going to start falling apart for me. Maybe, but I'm sticking to as much as possible. I did this because I wanted to, not because of any other reason. And that's a luxury that is afforded by, like I said, low cost ability to do all this stuff and whatever, and relatively high returns because it's making my living. But
right.
Yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. Andy, are you high right now? Has it kicked in? I'm just curious.
I just took a big swallow of beer. I don't not.
You sound pretty normal. You're maybe a little more talkative than usual. I wasn't trying to make you self-conscious. You're fine.
I was wondering when you were going to check in.
Marshall, this sounds like a corny 60 Minutes kind of question, but what inspires you to make music? And is it even other music, or is it something completely different, like art or movies or paintings or,
Yeah. That's a good question. Something about cinematography and film is what drew me to want to just do instrumental music. And I had really been interested in that for a long time. And I don't know, it just didn't, I didn't really start kind of playing around with it until a few years ago, and just something about what a piece of visual art or a film or a picture, something about what music can add to that is what drew me. And I think that's why with a lot of what ends up coming out, it has a very kind of emotional aspect to it. And I don't, like I say, that's not something I necessarily aimed to do or had in mind when I just started writing things. It's just kind of all just very an uplifting sort of feel.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I think I'm so intrigued and just interested in just being able to play a lot of these songs live, because I think with a visual element, it would be something I would really like.
Right.
But, you know, I did, of course, you know, I mean, I love Sigur Rós and I love, you know, all those kind of bands, and This Will Destroy You, and grew up loving those bands and still love them. And I think in some ways, you know, wanted to emulate what they were doing, but it came on a scale of how can I do this on my own?
Yeah.
And that seemed to be, that's still something I'm kind of navigating as far as just playing them and doing that. But that's what drew me to it, was just visual arts and film, I would say.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are there any particular movies that you watch over and over, or that are just very inspiring to you?
Yeah. One of my favorite movies just visually is probably No Country for Old Men.
Nice. Yeah.
And I mean, one of my, you know, all-time favorite movies. And I really like, you know, I loved Interstellar, and I loved Arrival.
Yeah.
I love movies that have that kind of feel of something kind of greater, you know, in some sense of human connection. And I love what music adds to that. Mm-hmm. And that was, you know, if I wanted to shoot for anything when I was starting to make music, it would be that, just, you know, having kind of a bigger, larger than life and that sort of feel.
Right.
And yeah, so all those movies I love, and I love the music, and I think visually they're inspiring to kind of what I do and what kind of music I want to make.
Right.
So speaking of visuals, and you're talking about wanting to do a live show with visuals, I mean, that's something obviously interesting to me, because I've had to figure that out. Like last year was the first time I did it. Well, not the first time, whatever. So how would you tackle the problem of putting something interesting visually in front of people while playing really boring auditory music, if that makes sense?
That's a great question, man. I honestly don't know that I would know where to start. I mean, I think I would probably
it's
just
a fun problem, but I'm just saying, like, I had a lot of fun figuring it out for myself and what I did, but yeah.
You know, I would like to think of some sort of, you know, probably, I guess, just theme or idea that I would want to be relatively consistent throughout. Yeah. And maybe try and build, you know, a set list or something around that. But that's one of the reasons I'm, you know, I feel apprehensive to do it, because it feels very overwhelming at the same time.
Oh man, I'll help you out. Send me an email. I'm serious.
Thanks, man. I will.
There's probably a few little pieces where you're like, oh, once you figure out those, you're like, okay, I could see how this could potentially all connect.
Yeah.
Be an actual thing.
Now, Andy, don't offer that unless you're going to actually respond.
I will. No, I mean, when I was...
CC Josh on that.
Yeah, just carbon copy me. I'll be like your employer who can just keep you in line.
Dude, I was so happy on tour whenever anybody just wanted to talk about the visuals and how they worked, because I had like reactive things going on. So like the piano, when I played the piano, would light up certain blocks on the screen and stuff.
Yeah.
So that
cool, man.
Yeah. That whenever I was happy to talk about that, because I was so proud of it. It's like, I spent a lot of time making these look cool. So yeah, I'll talk about it. But yes, I will. Josh is being a dick, but I will respond to your email.
It's at least part of my duty as your friend to be a dick.
Perfectly reasonable for you to say that.
It's back to soundtracks though. I mean, the first one that even occurred to me to listen to, well, that's not true because you introduced me to it, but was The Fountain.
Yes.
Which was partly because of Mogwai's involvement.
Yeah. That was 100% why for me. And I didn't even see the movie yet. I got to listen to the soundtrack before I saw the movie. Yeah,
I did not realize that. Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now they're much more prevalent where, I mean, they're getting pressed to vinyl in some cases. And it's more of a spectacle. And I mean, Hans Zimmer just played not
Inception
Coachella, but something.
Coachella. Yeah, it was.
It was at Coachella,
Yeah, so, 7 or 8 years ago, a composer probably wouldn't have had a spot at a indie music festival. But so all that to say, they are being paid closer attention to, which I think is a net positive.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the end of that observation. But
and it's good for people like me and Marshall who are sort of in the biz of making songs that fit under film pretty well. So
and I mean, I think you've mentioned this, Andy, is just wanting to tackle something like playing live, doing instrumental music.
Yeah.
I mean, in Denver, for one, and I imagine a lot of other places, it's not something typically that there's a big audience for if I'm just going to go play, at a club in Denver.
Right.
And it would be much more appealing to be able to have something visually, whereas without, it's kind of hard to keep people engaged, I would think.
Right.
Yeah, and at least if you make you talk about the live experience versus creating your music, it's like I personally, and Marshall, you can say if what you do with your music is different, but like I always want to remove myself in a way. Like I want the music to be able to stand as if I had nothing to do with it. Like I don't need to be there for it. And I feel the same way about the live show too. It's like I don't want you, like what I'm doing with like my hands and my feet is not the most important thing. And that's all I would have to offer otherwise. So the whole point is to just like, I want you to not think about me as a human being and just think about whatever you need to think about. And so that's a way to get it off of the human that is me on the stage.
Yeah.
So I agree. If those go together. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't want it to be something that's focused on me as a performance, something like where, more of what a band would do. I would rather it just be, more about the music. And I think a visual element would help that a lot.
Yeah. Well, Marshall, do you agree with this? I feel like one of the things I love about ambient music is it makes certain things simpler, because I know friends who are in bands and who like sing or do poetry in one case, and it's like I'm not jealous.
Who that is.
I don't know. I'm not jealous of the fact that there has to be a very somewhat rigid connection between them as a person and the music. Like I'm really thankful that I think what we're doing, it's more normal for it to be separate, and it's helpful, I think. And I would just have a really hard time navigating my personal self being too much involved in the art. So I don't know. I don't know if that's how you feel or if you like that or don't like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that, because I think what comes to mind for me is just the small things like image when it comes to being in a band or being an artist. I feel that's not something I really want to deal with or put energy into.
Yeah.
And for what I'm doing right now, I'm glad that I don't have to do that, because there's not that element of being on a stage and presenting kind of your image with your music and that sort of thing. So I'm happy that what we're doing, kind of the music more so stands on its own.
Yeah. And it's like the whole point even.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Marshall, where is the best place for people to get your stuff if they want to buy it? I'm not talking Spotify. I'm talking make a purchase.
Yeah. If they want to buy it, I can go to Bandcamp. It's on there. I pretty much have actually my kind of whole catalog on Bandcamp, and a lot of the music that I did. Actually, a lot of the music that I did in the beginning, I was kind of just putting out more in kind of a single format, mostly because I didn't know where things were going. But,
sure,
kind of would put out a song every month or so and just put it online, and ended up putting those on Bandcamp.
Oh, so you're the one putting out all the singles. That's your plan.
That's me. So, and then the album is on there as well. So, bestilltheearth.com is where you can be directed to all of that. And then, if there were people who were interested in using it for film and that sort of thing, they can go to soundstripe.com to do that.
Nice.
Are you exclusively on Soundstripe?
I am, as of now, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's been something I've been navigating as well, because they were the first guys I got involved with.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I've actually started using it too, but I'm in a weird situation because I have most of my entire catalog on another licensing site, and I can't put the same songs on both sites. So I've been trying to write new things for Soundstripe, and
I saw your stuff on there, Andy. I was excited to see it.
I haven't done the thing you did, or I purposefully haven't listened to anybody else's songs on it because I don't want to go down that road of what you talked about earlier. Mostly what I do is kind of like what I was saying with the YouTube videos, Josh. Is just like some days I'll just come in and be like, I want to sit down and by the end of this day have a song be done and then upload it to Soundstripe and then forget about it and make money on it as I sleep a little bit, whatever. Yeah. So, I like it for that type of scenario. That's kind of how I'm going to try to use it.
Yeah, it was cool. I went to Nashville just about 2 weeks ago for the first time, and I had never, Micah and I, who you guys had on the show, we had met in person when he was on a layover in Denver. But I got to meet those guys because I had never met most of them in person, and that was just a really cool and also intimidating time to be in the same room with, 30 amazing composers. They had kind of an office party, and all these guys who I've only heard their music through Soundstripe all in the same room.
Right.
Was very inspiring and intimidating at the same time.
Yeah. Andy would do really well in a setting like that.
I'm sure.
He'd like find the nearest corner and like a pint of whiskey and just like
it would be even weirder too, because I'd be like, hey, you guys seem nice. I've never listened to any of your music. I have no idea what any of you have done. So
I need to try that, just not listening so that I don't get so freaked out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Marshall, do you feel good about this? Is there anything else pressing that you would like to say or talk about?
You got a soapbox, man.
Okay.
Yeah. I got a soapbox right now.
Yeah. You feel free to use it as much.
I feel pretty. I don't have an agenda. So no.
Okay. Andy, do you have any comments for us? I feel like that'd be interesting while you're
well, let's do one of those
inebriated.
Oh my gosh. We can look. There's nothing off the top of my head. Well, I'm going to do the song. Do you think I could license that song on Soundstripe? That's got
I don't see why not.
It just starts popping up on all these podcasts.
Wedding videos, maybe.
Everyone has internet comment segments. That was one of the most fun times I've ever had writing a song, though.
Well,
doing those vocals, I was just laughing to myself. It was hilarious. All right, I'm looking through my comments, man. Now that I played the song, I gotta find something. Looking in the held for review section. Boy, this is so great. Okay, here's John Moniz commented on my video promoting my new album and said, check my blog for low poly gamer wallpapers. Thanks.
Low poly? What does that mean?
I don't know. Is it those little like pixelated looking images? I don't know.
Huh. I'm going to check it out immediately.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. It's always nice when other people self-promote on your thing.
Here's another thing kind of like that. It's a comment that's meant to sound nice, but obviously given my situation, you can tell they didn't listen or check out anything. This is from KHSX Houston. It says, sounds great. And then it just has the word lowercase in quotes, has good radio potential. Hit me up on email at his email address.
Oh my goodness.
You didn't listen actually. And it's not good. It doesn't have good radio potential, so don't worry about it.
You should hit him up. Just make sure.
Yeah. Andy, you could get on one of those demo CDs that goes out to hundreds of promoters and
pay like $199.99 to get on it.
Yeah. Totally. Those are very legitimate and good to do.
Yeah.
And I've definitely never done one, for sure. I've never done one. No. Don't even ask me if I've ever done
that. Last one could be another comment that, once again, involving sexual things with sound.
Oh, good. Yeah, great.
Said, when the swelling bass tones came in, I came so hard.
Yeah, similar
exactly,
territory.
Marshall.
Yeah.
Like, I guess this is a compliment, man, but I can't take it that way. And I wish you hadn't said that. So
fascinating. Well, that's a very underwhelming comment.
You put me on the spot, dude.
I know I did. Well, this has been great. And this show started in a very different place than where it has ended.
It did.
Andy, I feel like you have improved in these 90 minutes.
This is also proof. I'm going to have to go back and edit this and be like, oh, yeah, you do sound better, or you just sound like an idiot. I don't know. I guess I'll find out.
Next thing we know, you'll be Joe Rogan vaping live on the show and just getting...
He keeps it together pretty well.
He does. He probably has an extremely high tolerance by this point.
Okay. Well,
anyhow,
I'm sorry, everybody. Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Thank you.
It's been
Absolutely.
Great. Yep.
Josh is gone. He's getting a beer. I hope it's a good one. At least that's what I hear. Marshall is getting a beer too. I hope it's as good as the one Josh has. Beer time. Beer time. Beer time. Yeah. Beer time.
Oh, yes. Shit. That foam is coming at the top of my can.
All right.